Greetings. Hello. Hello, hello, hello. Hope you are well today on this wonderful day and glad that you have decided to join us for this week's excellent episode of Our Ancestors' Voices, a weekly program sponsored by the All African People's Revolutionary Party. And our topic today, a critical topic, reclaiming Juneteenth. Just so glad that we're able to address this very important issue with Juneteenth coming up in just a few short days, coming up this Friday. Very important that we, as people who see ourselves as caretakers of our culture and our dignity, that we recognize the importance of preserving, developing, and sustaining our political and cultural institutions. And without question, Juneteenth is one of those. There, in this climate that exists in this backward cesspool nation today, there are many people who view Juneteenth and all of these institutions that are designed to challenge capitalism and white supremacy. These institutions are viewed as problematic. And so it's important for us to understand that and to keep the focus on what these institutions like Juneteenth should represent for us. So we're going to spend this hour today putting that message out there. Glad that you all are here to join us for this. I'm feeling really tired right now for good reason. Spent the last 4 days in Long Beach, California, in Southern California. If you don't know California geography, Long Beach is a city just south, connected to Los Angeles. And it is where um, my family members live, our family members live. And the granddaughter graduated from community college on their way to the 4-year university. And we were there to enjoy that and to celebrate her accomplishment and enjoyed that. And then Friday, the 20 somethings and the 30 somethings convinced me to go play paddleball. I'd never played paddleball before in my life, but went out there. I mean, I've played sports my entire life, so I figured I could adapt and did pretty well for an old man. Held my own for sure with them and won most of the matches that I participated in. So that was fun. And then yesterday we went to the Disney theme park, a number of us, and enjoyed each other's company all day doing that. And I know some people who are activists, they view things like that as counter-revolutionary, and usually the people who believe that are people who are estranged from their family and have very few friends and don't have a life, and therefore are really not much use to the struggle for liberation, because the struggle for liberation is a mass struggle. And if you don't have any ability and social skills to connect with people, to make conversation with people, to get people to understand the importance of doing work to liberate the planet, then you're not very much good to the things that we want to see happen. So there are those of us who recognize that those skills are important, and it's not easy for me, but it's important to maintain positive relationships with the people in your life. And even though I didn't really want to do a whole lot yesterday in terms of rides. I usually do, but just yesterday, was a little tired, but just enjoyed the company. So the 6-hour drive back this morning to where we live in Northern California. So a little tired, but glad to be here. And we'll start by just simply going through our introductions for why we do this program and who we are. Our Ancestors' Voices is sponsored by the All African People's Revolutionary Party, AAPRP. We are a revolutionary, independent, mass, Pan-African political party that has its base in the national home for African people everywhere on earth, all 2.5 billion of us scattered across approximately 120 countries in the world. All of us, including the ones who don't know that they're African, that don't claim Africa, we still understand that we are African. And once Africa is free, we won't have any problems like that. People will be pushing us out the way to connect to Africa. And that gets to what our objective is in the APRP. It's a fight for Pan-Africanism, which we define correctly as one unified socialist Africa. We believe this one unified socialist Africa is the solution to the problems all our people face on the planet Earth. And it's a strong segue to contributing not only to our liberation as African people everywhere on earth, but towards all just liberation struggles on earth, towards building a world where people are able to reach their full potential and have the support of the institutions that allows them to do that. And that's what we mean by socialism. If you think socialism is anything other than what I just said, you don't know what it is. I don't care how much you think you know, or how much somebody told you what it was, or how much you thought you knew from your parents who came from Eastern Europe, or whatever the hell your problem is. That's what we want, and that's what we're fighting for. And our work to achieve Pan-Africanism is outlined in Nkrumah's Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare, displayed on this page, the cover. And this gives us our strategy that we're working on, working to build this African unity for Pan-Africanism all over, primarily the African continent, as well as the rest of the African world, or what's called the African diaspora. And I've had the privilege, as I've stated many times, to do work, party building work, as we call it, in many places in Africa, as well as Europe and across the Americas. And we'll continue to do this work, as it's the most important thing that I see myself being able to make a contribution to for whatever time I have left on this planet. And our Ancestors' Voices is hosted each week by myself, Ajamu, and daughter, Dr. Shakura. We are both my biological and ideological daughter, and we are both, of course, active organizers within the All African People's Revolutionary Party. So to get us started on our topic this week, reclaiming Juneteenth, I'll turn it over to Shakura.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Greetings, everyone. We hope you are doing well today. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for choosing to be here for today's topic. As we all know, this particular empire that we live in is very focused on having their institutions and propagandizing us to accept and to see it as socially normalized that we should be celebrating these institutions, right? I had some opportunity to spend time with some family, and we went out to eat yesterday, and we went to just some typical basic, restaurant on the pier in California. And when you walk in, there was a table that had all this U.S. Empire paraphernalia, and I was thinking to myself, it's June 13th. Like, it's not even July 1st. Like, why? You know what I mean? But that's the propaganda. You understand what I'm saying? That's the propaganda. I have, coworkers who are asking me, are you going to be in town for the 4th? Because there's planning involved, there's organization involved, because this is a big event. The last example I'll give, which was really, it just really blew me out the water, was the last time I went to get my nails done. She was trying to show me some different colors, and she handed me a book that I had never seen before that had these new colors in it. And she handed me the book open, so I closed it, and it said America 250 U.S. Freedom, and I was like, what do nail colors have to do with the United States turning 250 years old? This is the propaganda, you all. This is it right here. That is insane to me. That is insane to me. And I am learning, as I am continuing to just navigate in this path, on this life. We as human beings, assuming that we are interested in thinking critically, it is unjust to us if we receive information and we cannot make sense of it. I'm assuming, for the most part, that most of us, if we were to look at something like that, we're at a nail salon and they're advertising the United States turning to, like, that has nothing to do with what color you choose to put on your nails. That's absolutely ridiculous. But it also goes to show you that they will find every nook and cranny of how they will push their line and push their institution and shove it down your throat till you have no choice, until you have no choice, until you have no choice but to not only accept it, but to internalize it, to envision it, to embody it. So, because we understand just how powerful that propaganda is, where no space is safe, not even a manicure for crying out loud, this means that we're going to have to be able to think a lot more critically, you all. We also are, excuse me, are going to have to understand that if they are working this hard to push and shove and enforce their institutions, not only do we need to protect and show up for our own institutions, but we need to be reminded that we don't have to celebrate their institutions. This is exactly why we need to protect our own and actually embrace our own, promote our own, give our own a chance to build what it needs to be for us culturally, for us to really research and understand why our institutions need to matter just as much, if not more, because it's really about survival. It's about fighting, it's about resistance, and it's about understanding that there's another way. I would argue from an analogy standpoint, us as a collective understanding that we can push against celebrating these backward institutions that really celebrate and promote the capitalist empire, the US empire, us understanding that we don't have to buy into that, to me, is the same level of importance as us as resistance and revolutionary people understanding that we need to protect Cuba because just like Cuba, it is possible for other areas of the world to become a socialist empire and for them to have the means in place to protect people, to have profit not be more important than people. And I think, just like accepting socialism, it's not attractive, right? When you tell people you don't celebrate the fourth, that's not attractive. That doesn't go well, right? People don't understand why you would do something like that. But if you think about it, the whole reason that you're supposed to protect Cuba is because people don't think that it's possible for socialism to be successful. They don't think it's possible. And Cuba has been the constant reminder of that for 60 plus years, that not only is it possible, it's been done. It is happening right now, and it has been done. Even with the blockade stopping them, they are still persevering forward. They are still moving forward. They are still wiping out AIDS. They have still wiped out cervical cancer. They have still made sure that maternal mortality has not ever impacted any birthing person on that island. Infant mortality has not impacted any child on that island. There's no way that you can see things like that and believe and have the nerve to say socialism doesn't work when you're reading about these kind of miraculous abilities that they have been able to enforce, all because they prioritize humanity over profit. So I would argue it is the same with you taking a stand to not celebrate these institutions. You have to understand that it is possible that there are other institutions out there that are more meaningful, they are more humane. They are more driven for the collective purpose, which means ultimately you celebrating those non popular institutions is going to have a bigger impact on the rest of oppressed people getting more organized so that we can get control back, whatever it is for us. For most of us, it's land ownership. And then once we get that, we can start to ascertain the power that comes with that. Once we get that, we can start to decolonize our culture. And once we get that, we can start to normalize our institutions and help other people see that our institutions are actually promoting a better quality of life, not just for our own people, but for all humanity. For all humanity. Institutions are tools that are literally created to help us advance the values of the systems that produce the institutions, right? So for capitalism, those definitions of institutions are included to be, on Thanksgiving, right? In November, right? The 4th of July, or what you might call the 4th, meaning July 4th, right? We're talking about Veterans Day, right? These are some examples of that, right? And I think that you should even pay attention even to how we are choosing in this seminar right now to resist the acceptance of those institutions up to the point where we will say language like unthanksgiving. That is so normalized for me when I see that. I just politely put the U and the N in front of the word and I just say what I need to say. And I am not really interested in whether or not I'm offending people anymore because if you ask me, saying the word without unthanksgiving is a complete offense to indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere, actually. It is a complete offense to them because that day is not a day of eating turkey and watching football. That day represents mass genocide. It represents sexual assault. It represents killing thousands of indigenous people deceiving them, building their trust and taking it for granted and manipulating them. And the settler colonizers coming in and taking what they wanted without any indigenous people needing to be considered of how that would impact their nation, how that would impact the people, how it would impact the land, the agriculture. None of that was considered. And then we see products of that, because they don't own their land. We see suicide rates being the highest with indigenous people. We see alcoholism being a terrible disease that impacts those communities. We have a responsibility to fight for them. So, yes, we do need to change our language. We should not still be saying that word. That is a curse word to indigenous people, as far as I'm concerned. And if you consider yourself an ally for indigenous people, if you have done a land acknowledgement at any point in your life for indigenous people, then what's to stop you from taking it a step further? What's to stop you from adopting a new way to honor indigenous people? Because that day is not a day of thanks. It is not. But the propaganda will convince you that it is. So it's up to you to understand the difference of that. And it's also up to you to set a new reality and to push back against that based on your beliefs and based on the fact that you know that day does not represent happiness and joy. So why are we not talking about that? Why are we pretending like it does, but instead like enforcing what the reality is? That is the reality. And it's important for us to do that. Also, we need to be in alliance with indigenous people. Without them, we wouldn't even be here because we're on their land right now. And we don't even acknowledge them. That's not right. So we have a lot of work to do when it comes to that. We need to think about the tools that are literally created to use the US as a free democratic country that we should be thankful for, regardless of how far from the truth that really is. And that is harmful within itself, because if we don't acknowledge the truth and we know that the US is lying to us, then we are no different from them. If you really think about it, we are bystanders and we are just quietly using our privilege to remain silent. That's not okay either. That is not okay. That is a choice to choose to not be reactive, but instead to just go with the flow. As I said, one of my favorite quotes by Baba Ajamu, who said this years ago to another comrade who was organizing at the time, they said that they didn't want to do something based on their comfort level. And he said, it is so much easier to swim with the stream than against it. And I just think it's important for us to just think about those words. I mean, that was brilliant. Like, we all could just choose to just go with the flow if we wanted to, but some of us have to continue to fight for what's right. And some of us have to be able to sleep well at night. And if we sleep well at night, it's because we know that we're not celebrating a day where mass indigenous people were murdered. We're not doing that. I personally, as a cis woman, I'm not celebrating a day where cis indigenous folks that were non-male were assaulted. I'm not doing that. And you should not be doing that either. And something as small as using the language is actually a very large impact if you really think about it. Because that means that you're promoting it. If you're using their language to talk about their day, of their institution, of how they have defined what that day should look like, you are promoting it. You are consenting to it. You are agreeing with it. That is what you are doing. The only way you can change that is to resist. And as I said, adopting new language is one of the best ways that you can do that. Of course, you could also incorporate what we've done in some of the other seminars where we have talked about Veterans Day, where we have talked about what it means to honor the indigenous people on the day that you're getting together with your family. Because we're not saying, next slide, please, we're not saying don't celebrate the day. We understand that, you have families and they have, values, and they're not going to necessarily understand if you don't want to, go all out and do the things. But there is a way where you can have your family values and still have your revolutionary content, and be able to share some of that with some of your family members who also need to be made aware of what this means for all of us. Again, this is a collective struggle. It shouldn't just be on you, and you should be able to share that in a safe space and allow them to understand what's happening. And as I said, if you're not really sure how to do that, maybe if this is one of your first seminars with us, welcome. At the same time, go to our YouTube page. We've done plenty of seminars on what it means to engage with unthanksgiving in a healthy way that is admirable and honorable to Indigenous people. We've done several seminars on Veterans Day. We've done several seminars on the 4th of July. You could take your pick. You could take your pick on which one you want to watch. So we do encourage you to go back and do that. I also want to say that When we think about the US empire, their institution is all about promoting servitude, right? So, why do their institutions exist? They exist because they want to lead you towards giving some type of respect, but also being subservient and really obedient, if you will, to the US empire. This is why I just talked about in the previous slide how if you choose not to engage with those institutions, meaning you choose not to participate, you're not using the language that the colonizer has offered in terms of celebrating said day and institution. Instead, you're choosing to resist, you're choosing to use your time in another way, then that means you're in a position where people are going to start to see you as a troublemaker. They're going to start to see you as somebody who's not being obedient, someone who is not supporting the capitalist system, and therefore not being patriotic, right? Not being a good American or whatever they say. Now, I don't know because I just don't pay attention to it anymore. I just do my thing. But I think that it's important for us to kind of question that a little bit. You know, why is that when you're choosing to stray away, you're being singled out? And again, like I'll give you the example I gave last weekend when we did the seminar on voting, and how the comrade said to me, all I know is you're supposed to vote. And I said, but tell me how voting has yielded the outcomes that you are expecting it to yield. Because to me, I don't see a benefit of doing that if what you're hoping to accomplish, the changes you're hoping to make, the fact that you don't want to see African people being gunned down or wrongly accused or wrongly convicted, right? And the comrade couldn't answer that question because voting doesn't have a way of moving the needle in a way that supports oppressed people. Not if it's based off of capitalism, it doesn't. Not if it's based off of inhumanity, it doesn't. Not if it's based off of imperialism, it doesn't. Those are oxymorons. They're not going to go together. They don't fit. Okay. So we need to kind of think deeply about that. And so this is why we're saying you having respect and obedience for the US empire is part of why people celebrate these institutions. So you're not going to challenge it because that means that you would fall in line if you're celebrating them. And then people don't have to question you. They don't have to question your loyalty. They don't have to question whether or not you are devoted and devoted to this US empire. But we would ask you again, since when has you being a devoted person to the empire, when has that yielded positive results for you and your family? When has it yielded positive results for you and your ancestors? If you identify as an oppressed person, when in your life has this ever been good for you to be committed to the US empire? When has that ever been a positive thing for you? We could even think about what the viewpoint looks like, about how if you are a devoted person to this empire, right? Anyone who does this would not be considered suspicious at best because the contempt would be at worst, right? Them being in contempt would be at worst. And again, like when you're rocking the boat, it's risky. And we understand that. We totally understand that. But I guess I would just say to you, how did your ancestors feel when they were rocking the boat? Have you stopped to think about how that had to be a tough decision for them to make? It probably wasn't the easiest for them. Regardless of how you identify, whatever your race is, whatever your gender, your class status, your ancestors sacrificed at some point in time so that you could be sitting here right now listening to this or standing listening to this. Maybe you're driving, you're jogging, you're walking your dog, whatever you're doing, you have a device that has access to internet, which is privilege, because your ancestors struggled for you to get to this point. They wanted to live a certain way so that they could live long enough for their DNA to transmit through the placenta biologically, and somehow, some way, it got to you and gave you the chromosomes that you needed to be the person you are today. So we ask you, how would your ancestors feel if they could hear you saying like you don't want to struggle in the same way? They didn't have that luxury. If they did, they wouldn't be here today, which means a part of you wouldn't be here today. So again, as we always say, it is bigger than you. We always say that because it's true. Everything we do is bigger than us. Everything we do is bigger than us. And we have certainly got to understand that faster and sooner than later. The last thing I'll say is that the job of the institutions in this backward society is to make you feel like something is wrong with you if you take a stand. That's the job of these institutions. You are not supposed to resist celebrating them. You're not supposed to question celebrating them. You're not supposed to be critical. You're not supposed to think for yourself, for crying out loud. You're not supposed to do that. If you do, then you are considered, a martyr. If you do, you're considered a troublemaker. If you do, you're considered unpatriotic. But we would ask you again, what is the harm of having those characteristics associated with you? Because if you are considered a martyr, then you would probably be in a position where you're doing something because you understand it's bigger than yourself. And, hopefully you could be following in the footsteps of a Shirley Graham Dubois. Maybe you're following in the footsteps, excuse me, Shirley Graham Dubois. You're following in the footsteps of Malcolm X. Maybe you're following in the footsteps of Carlotta Lusumi. You're following in the footsteps of Kwame Nkrumah. Would that be so bad? That you're actually thinking about humanity to help you make the informed decisions that you're making? Would that be so bad? For you to stand on your own and to think for your own self, for not having somebody else influencing your decisions? This is the kind of thinking that we need more of, actually. We don't need less of that. We need more of that so that people can actually start to see that they are capable and they don't need to rely on the capitalist system, actually, because these institutions will make you think that everything is fine and everything is normal, and it's not. That's why you're on here on Sunday listening to us. It's not. And if you're not organizing, you're listening to us. And if you are organizing, you certainly know it's not okay. You certainly know that. So we have to kind of dig a little bit deeper into that, you all, and we have that responsibility. This is why we always say, if you're not in an organization, to join one that's working for justice. If you're not ready to do that, you should at least be increasing your political education. If you're not ready to do that, maybe you could just read an article and share it with a friend and talk to them about it. And then maybe one day you can start some type of circle where you're reading shared material. And if you're not ready to do that, at the very, very, very least, you should be supporting Pan Africanist organizations. You should be supporting indigenous organizations, supporting Asian organizations, any group that is oppressed. You should be supporting them, whether it's providing books to Burkina Faso, whether it's going to events that are hosted by the Black Alliance for Peace in the Oakland area, Bay Area, Oakland, whether it's going to any Palestinian events that are happening and supporting our Palestinian comrades. We have a responsibility, you all. And we don't need to lose momentum right now. We actually need to pick it up at a much larger rate, because now is the time, especially with all the propaganda that's coming up. I mean, you can't even get a manicure without being reminded of the US empire. So we have they have got their things in line. We got to get our things in line. We got to get our stuff together. We got to be ready to resist that, you all. Otherwise, our brains are going to be warped with all this propaganda that it's not even based on truth or reality. So with that, I will close and pass it back to Baba Jamu.
Ashe, obrigada, Santi Sana, Medasi. Thank you very much. And so we want to talk about Juneteenth and positive institutions like Juneteenth. And we want to start by disrupting this narrative that somebody freed African people on January 1st, 1863 to 1865. Someone did that for us. That's not how that happened. We escaped chattel slavery, not just in the United Snakes of America, but all over the Americas because of our dignity and our resistance to it. And I know that most of us have learned nothing about that. We haven't learned anything about how we resisted chattel slavery, because your slave master is not going to tell you how the best way that you can overcome the slave master's rule and control. They're never going to tell you that. Your oppressor is not going to educate you on how to get free. So if you haven't taken the time to understand that history, you're not going to understand it. So we're going to hopefully say some things that get people interested in learning more. And we'll start with the book on the screen, A History of Pan-African Revolt by C.L.R. James. And in that book, James talks about over 300 revolts against the chattel slave system that happened all over the Americas, from slave revolts in this country all the way through Central America, the Caribbean, all through South America, down to the southern tip of South America. All of the Americas, these revolts happened. And I want to say that this is really the single most thing. There are a number of things, but this one is never talked about. It's always talked about like somebody freed us. And we know different. We know that we fought back against chattel slavery. We burned plantations. We cut the slave master's throat. We did everything we could to fight for our dignity. And don't sit here and say, well, oh my God. I mean, if you say that, when I say we cut the master's throat, then you're the first throat that needs to be cut when we're fighting for freedom, because you're going to stand in the way. You know, Malcolm X was speaking to an audience once, and he asked them, "How many of you will fight for freedom?" No, he said, "I'm sorry." He said, "How many of you want freedom?" Everybody raised their hand. And then he said, "How many of you will fight for freedom?" And then probably about 50 to 60% of the people present raised their hand. And he said, "How many of you are willing to kill for freedom?" And then only a small percentage of the people present raised their hand. And he pointed to that small percentage and he said, "You need to start with everybody else in this room." And that's absolutely right. I mean, it might sound harsh to people, but we were engaged in an inhumane system that snatched our humanity. And we've talked so many times about the difference between chattel slavery and serfdom, which existed outside of chattel slavery. So if you don't know, you got to go back and do that analysis and research. Chattel slavery is what we experienced as African people who are in the Western Hemisphere today and colonized all throughout Africa and in Europe, etc. So this is the system, the inhumane system that was placed upon us that really defines how wealth is controlled today. If you know the history, you know this. And we've done plenty of workshops on that topic as well. So when we stood up to resist this system, we had every right to do that. This is a system that was based upon us being property for our entire lives. The children that we were forced to produce, not on our own terms, but we were forced to do, they became property for their entire lives. We were property. Like whatever you're looking at around you, your computer, property, your cell phone, property. That's what we were. We were property of lesser value and respect than your cell phone and your laptop today. And so we resisted that, and we had every right to do that. We had every responsibility to do that. And that's what happened. So this is what Juneteenth represents. You know, we've talked about this many, many times. But we'll just say that Juneteenth, along with African Liberation Day, of course, which we would argue is the highest expression of Juneteenth, because Juneteenth speaks to the struggle for liberation from chattel slavery in this backward country. And African Liberation Day steps up the game even higher and says, now we're talking about uniting African people all over the world who are only divided because of colonialism and slavery. That's the only reason why we're separated, ideologically as well as physically. So what African Liberation Day as an institution is telling us is that now we've eliminated this chattel slavery institution. Now we step up our game and we talk about the unity we need, which centers around Africa to get back what's been stolen from us for the last 500 years and is the real reason why we are in the position that we're in today. So these types of institutions, Shakur talked about on Thanksgiving, Nakba, which is when the Zionists took over the Palestinian state and renamed it Israel in 1948. Cinco de Mayo, we just did a program about that a couple of weeks ago, so you should check that out. And all these other institutions that speak to our resistance against oppression. This is what we're talking about. And we should look at these days and these institutions as representations of our continued struggle to be free. So in other words, what that means is we don't have the luxury in 2026 of looking at Juneteenth as just a day to get together and barbecue or just a day to talk about what happened 150 years ago. The conditions that existed 150 years ago exist today. And in many ways, the threat that those conditions pose has the potential to do even greater damage to us than it did 150 years ago. So we have to be cognizant of that, keeping our head on a swivel, keeping our brain on a swivel, and understanding that we shouldn't view Juneteenth as just something that happened in the 1800s. It's not just something that reflects whoever died fighting the Civil War. That really has nothing to do with Juneteenth. I get a ton of hate mail, and I have all these crackers and sometimes graham crackers writing me, and they're like, oh, 600,000. They can't even get their information correct because it's not correct. 600,000 white men died to free you from slavery. Remember that. 300,000 white men died to free you from slavery. And I always respond because I'm a great troll. You don't want to troll me. I respond and I tell them, not a single white man has ever died for me, ever, or any of our people in any of these wars fighting for any segment of the U.S. military. Not a single one of them has died fighting for us. That's a lie that your drunk ass daddy told you, but we know better. That's how I respond to that. And the reason why I say that is because we talked about this many times, that the Civil War was fought because the Northern capitalists wanted to industrialize the South. They wanted to industrialize it because the cotton picking by hand by our ancestors was not the most efficient method of profitability for picking cotton and sugarcane in the Caribbean and coffee in South America and textiles and all of these things that our ancestors were forced to labor over. There were more efficient means. There were textile mills. There were the cotton gin. There were other means to do that. The Sally machine to spin the textile. There were all of these technologies that were developed, and the Northern capitalists could produce more using that than relying on us to produce these things by hand. So that's what the Civil War was fought for, and we were just a byproduct of that. Lincoln said that himself. They didn't give a damn about us then. They don't give a damn about us now. And we just have to understand the reality of that and accept it. So Juneteenth is a day that remembers our struggle against chattel slavery because it's that struggle that ended that brutal system, nothing else. Juneteenth is a day acknowledging our struggle to overcome chattel slavery, not some cracker helping us overcome chattel. And some of us are so insane. We're sitting around here arguing Lincoln was black. I mean, I don't give a damn. I don't care if he was black, purple, maroon. I don't care if he was a cracker or a graham cracker. He had no interest in ensuring the safety and security of our people. He signed the Emancipation Proclamation because it was in the best interest of the capitalist empire of the United States of America for him to do so. And those are his words. They aren't mine. He acknowledged that from day one. All you have to do is study it and understand it. You know, Paul Mooney, the comedian, talked about, regardless of that, the fact that he had to sign the Emancipation, that's why they put him on the penny, the cheapest form of currency. I mean, that's a joke, but it doesn't reflect actual history, that individual had no interest in serving the masses of African people, none whatsoever. And we certainly have to understand that. Why claiming Juneteenth is important? It's important and it's necessary. Why it's necessary? And there you see there's a placard, there's a picture of Gabriel Prosser, who led one, I would argue, probably one of the most, if not the most successful African slave revolts in this country, along with Nat Turner and many others. But Gabriel Prosser, this is a plaque there that speaks, it's in Virginia, where his and Nat Turner-led rebellions happened about 3 decades apart. And the plaque there talks about what Gabriel Prosser and the group of people who participated in the rebellion accomplished. But because of the dominant framing of Juneteenth today around this false narrative that Lincoln freed African people by signing the Emancipation Proclamation and ended slavery. That's why it's necessary for us to understand the importance of reclaiming Juneteenth. The understory there is that we should somehow be grateful towards this government, the very government that enslaved us in the first place, that we should somehow be grateful for them. And a lot of us today, many of you, even if you don't believe it, you have family members, you know people that do. that somehow, some way, for some reason, we should be thankful to the United Snakes government for where we are today. A lot of us believe that, even though there's absolutely no evidence whatsoever that justifies why we should believe that. You cannot produce a single shred of evidence that would explain to a child why we should be thankful to the U.S. military for anything that we have today. They are not responsible for a single, I don't care if your daddy was in it or you were in it. I don't give a goddamn. You can't explain to a child why we should be thankful to you and anybody that served in the U.S. military for anything that we have today. You should have ducked out and not served. I respect the ones that refused to do it. I respect Muhammad Ali and all those thousands like him who refused to do it. Anybody could follow orders. It don't take nothing to follow in unjust orders. That's not anything for anybody to thank you for. That's a goddamn shame that you did that. I would never do that. They'd have to throw me in jail before I answer and respond to any of that nonsense. I sacrificed. I'm glad it happened. Now, I sacrificed going to law school. I was accepted to go to law school and would have gotten financial aid, UC Berkeley, in 1984, and didn't do it because they demanded that Reagan had this goddamn, you got to sign the selective service thing so that you would be eligible for a draft. And I refused to do it. It would never do it. It would never, and advised hundreds of young people of all nationalities, all genders, not to do it during that time. And because of that, got a visit from the FBI back in 1984. Can show you the paperwork. And I told them then, and I'll tell them right now, those that are listening, you can kiss the juice around my black ass. I'm going to tell the truth to my people. And the truth is that we shouldn't have anything to do with any of that nonsense. It has nothing to do with any rights that we have. If you want to thank somebody for their service, you should be thanking people like the gentleman on this screen here, Gabriel Prosser. You should be thanking the unnamed, unknown people who got their heads busted, their heads blown out, fighting for us to have dignity. The people in the civil rights movement that fought for us, the people in the Universal Negro Improvement Association of Marcus and Amy Garvey that fought for us, the people in the Black Panther Party that fought for us, in the Revolutionary Action Movement, all of our organizations at home in Africa, too many to name here, we name them all the time, all of our organizations all over the world. That's who you should be thanking. Those are the people who deserve the credit for whatever you have today. If you can have this day off Friday, the reason why you have it is because some of our people sacrificed who never had a single goddamn day off. And so we honor them. And we honor them not by barbecuing some damn ribs and eating so much that you're farting and you can't even move. We honor them by continuing their work to liberate our people. That's the only way we can honor them. That's the only way that we do that. So no, there's no gratitude towards the hell with the U.S. government. Go straight to hell. And another lie within that construct is that we have no agency as a people, because if you believe that we owe something to the country that enslaved us, then you're also going to believe by default that we have no agency, meaning we have no ability to think and act for ourselves. The only thing we can do is what the empire wants us to do. And many of us believe that, which means that in 2026, we're still enslaved if we believe that. We're still enslaved. If you don't have a single thought that you possess that didn't come from independent study of our conditions, then you're still a slave. If you're still saying things like, we went to war with Iran, you're still a slave. If you're still saying things like, we bombed this country, you're still a slave. You didn't bomb nobody. You don't have no military. You don't have a single military that would fight for your interests. You don't even know how to point out Iran on the map, talking about we bombed Iran. I'm like, why are you claiming what these terrorists have done? I would never do that. Those terrorists bombed Iran. I'm pissed that my tax dollars have to pay for that nonsense. That's why I do the work that I do. And that's why you should do it. So by reclaiming Juneteenth, what we mean is like all our institutions for justice, we claim it for what it is. Juneteenth isn't some celebration of Black joy. I'm not saying we can't be joyful. I'm extremely joyful. I'm extremely joyful. I'm happier than you will ever be, most of you. But I understand what that means when I say happy. When I say I'm happy, I'm not saying I'm sitting here with a shit-eating grin on my face all the time, and I'm just all singing songs all the time, singing in the rain. I'm not talking about that kind of foolishness. When I say happy, I am honored to be able to participate in this struggle for justice. I'm honored that I've done the work and had the mentors who helped me develop the courage to stand up for what's right, regardless of the consequences. And there have been many consequences. And I say today, bring them on, goddammit, because this is the type of person that I've always been striving to be. And when I say happy, that's what I mean, because I can look at myself in the mirror and I respect the person that's staring back at me. And the problem that so many of us have is that we can't do that. We don't have any respect for the person that's staring back at us. And I'm going to be honest with you, you shouldn't. You shouldn't have any respect for that person. You should be struggling to do better so that you can be someone that can look at that person and say, yeah, I feel that. That's what I'm talking about. So this is not about no barbecue day on Friday. It's not about having a damn Juneteenth cruise where you drink alcohol till you can't even stand up and you don't even do anything except go and sit on the toilet and flow out from both ends of your body. That's not what we should do. Not saying you can't have joy and have fun, but we have to redefine what joy. We view joy as nothing except engaging in pleasurable activities. That's how we define joy. And that's a part of joy, but also a bigger and more important part of joy is being able to have respect for ourselves and each other and appreciating the contributions that we make. That's joy to me. That's the most important part of joy, right? So this day, Juneteenth, is our ability to reflect on our continued need to fight against our enemy. The U.S. capitalist empire that enslaved us in chattel slavery to begin with. And then that wasn't even good enough for them. After that, they went into 100 years of racist segregation, legalized racist segregation. And that wasn't even enough for them. When that came to an end in the early 1970s, now they've re-upped on this Southern strategy and these processes of taking away what little bit we've been able to carve out from this backward ass system, and they're still doing that today. So I just cannot understand why any African would look at this country and feel like they have anything to be thankful about from this government or any of these damn governments. You are a slave if you think like that. Period. Dot. Period. Dot. So how do we reclaim our institutions like Juneteenth? And, Shakur is always good about mentioning Carlotta Lukumi, and that's a statue of her I believe it's in Matanzas. That's where that's a place in Cuba, a township, a city, and they had a sugar plantation there. Because many of us, we don't understand. I hear all these idiots talking about, well, the people that weren't in America didn't talking about this kind. They don't even understand when they say America. They're talking about all of this entire hemisphere. But I hear this all the time from these idiots that these Africans in other parts of the Americas outside of the United States didn't suffer from slavery the way we did here. And when I hear that, that tells me immediately that you haven't turned one page of one book studying African people anywhere. You have not done that. You might be fooling some other people who are dumber than you are, but you are not fooling us. We know you haven't done that, because if you had done any study, you would know how ridiculous that is. I have been to the Matanzas sugar plantation in Cuba. I've been to the Sam Sharp slave plantation in Jamaica. I've been to the slave dungeons in Senegal and in Ghana. I've been to the slave plantations in Mississippi and Alabama and Louisiana. There is no way in hell you can convince me that this is a oppression Olympics among African people who were kidnapped and taken out of our homeland, Africa. Anybody suggesting that is one or two things: trying to get some money and get paid, or is a damn fool. And I would argue, if that's the case, you're both of those things. You're a goddamn idiot, and you're trying to get paid for being a goddamn idiot. As Malcolm X told us, trying to say whatever you know the white man wants you to say, so he can give you a biscuit and pat your head, and you can go run with your biscuit and be happy. I mean, a worthless piece of you know what. So Carlotta Lakumi was a Yoruba woman from Nigeria. Ijamu is a Yoruba name. And she was kidnapped by the Spanish and was taken to Cuba because the Spanish had colonized Cuba, and they used our people to perform slave labor, picking sugar, building a plantation in Matanzas so we would pick sugar. And while a lot of us today would, well, all we got, we got to pick the sugar, that we can't do nothing about that. We can't, it's consequences if we fight the master. It's consequences if you don't fight the master. Imagine if our ancestors would have said the kind of things that we say all the time today. Imagine if they would have said, if we stand up and the master doesn't like it, there's going to be consequences. Imagine if they said that, guess what? Your black ass would still be in chains today. That's the reality. They understood that there were consequences, idiots. They decided that they didn't give a damn about that there's something more important than consequences, and that's dignity. That's what I know a lot of us don't understand. I lost you on that. You don't know anything about dignity. Nothing about your life reflects dignity. But some of us understand what dignity is, and we're going to stand on dignity because we know that without dignity, we have nothing else. No amount of money in the world will make up for it if you don't have any dignity. You'll just be an idiot with money, and if you don't have any dignity, you won't have the money very long, because you won't have the ability to ascertain who has your best interests at heart, because you won't have any real respect for yourself, because that's what dignity is. And if you don't have that, then you're going to run through money like you ran through toilet paper, eating all that filth that you ate and couldn't keep in your body. So this is the reality of what we go to. And we just want to say, go to the parades, go. Have a good time. Go to the barbecues. Don't leave here and lie. They say we can't barbecue. That's why I don't like them. We didn't say that. You just got plastic rope between your ears. We're saying go to the parades, go to the barbecues, go to the parties. But that just can't be the end of what you do. That's what we're saying. That can't be all that you do. That's what we're saying. And we're not saying boycott those activities. Go there and organize participation and understanding. Do that. Talk to the participants at those events. Do a 5-minute slideshow about the actual history of Juneteenth. Reveal that we freed ourselves. Nobody freed us. Talk about that. That's important to do, because most of these Juneteenths are sponsored, the big ones especially, sponsored by multinational corporations. They're doing one here. I'm thankful I'm going to be out of town. That's a part of the reason why I go out of town for this stuff, because I don't want to. The one here where I live in Sacramento is sponsored by every goddamn corporate, the PG&E, Wells Fargo, I don't know, some of these other corporations. How the hell is Wells Fargo going to respect what Juneteenth actually stands for, when Wells Fargo wouldn't exist if they had not profited from financing slave ships and slave plantations? Go look that up yourself. Don't believe me when I say it. They've acknowledged it. They've admitted it. So many of us are too lazy. We don't even know that. I got an account at Wells Fargo. Of course you do, slave. Where else would you have it? So we know that doesn't make any sense, that they're going to be the people that uphold the dignity of Juneteenth. No way in hell. So talk to the participants. Do a 5-minute slideshow about what it is. Talk about the revolt, the reason for the Civil War, the real reason, how we fought for our dignity against forces, which would later shape the concept of police departments. Educate people about that. Have discussions. Involve people. Involve the youth. Change the tide. Everyone, no matter who you are, can do this. You just have to engage with a little effort. And you know what? Because of everything our ancestors sacrificed, you owe it. You owe it to our future generations to do this. You owe it to put your cowardice aside and stand up for something and make the day really mean something. Make it really mean something. And when we start to think and act like that, that's when you'll notice immediately that these conditions we face will start to fade immediately. And we just thank you for joining us today. We invite you back next week, June 21st, 4 to 5 p.m. Pacific time. Our topic next week is going to be fatherhood must include struggling for liberation. I am so sick of hearing people talk about African couples. The African love is beautiful. I have it. I have a lovely wife. She's wonderful. I've had a lot of challenges in my life, but I'm fortunate to have her. And we definitely are a manifestation of African love, and I'm thankful for that. But at the same time, just because we have an individual relationship, that means nothing if it's not connected to this struggle for dignity we are engaged in as a collective people. Our individual relationship is zero if we're not engaged in the struggle to bring dignity to the masses of our people. So that's what we're going to talk about next week. I'm not concerned with gifts on Father's Day. I'm concerned with us engaging in understanding. That's the gift. That's my gift, is when we come to a higher level of consciousness. So join us next week. We're going to be talking about that. The QR code in the upper left, the red and white one, again, it provides information on our various programs, the online programs that we have, lets you know when they're happening. And then also we have the Forward Ever shop. You can order clothing that reflects the revolutionary messages that we want you to have. And then hoodcommunist.org, you can read. That's a very important blog for you to support. So go there and do that. No self-defense class for the second week in a row here in Sacramento this week. Because it's Juneteenth, in honor of Juneteenth, I will not be here. We'll be doing other things. So go ahead and put on your calendar. June 25th is the next class. Thursday, June 25th, 6 to 8 p.m. Come on out, 2775 Cottage Way, Unit 15, 2775 Cottage Way, Unit 15. We've been doing some wonderful work. We started full contact sparring. We've done some great work with grappling. We're learning some very important skills, disarming skills. You should come out. And we're also having some great discussions about the things going on in the world. So come on out. At the bottom, you should join the APRP, aprp-intl.org. You can go there and watch a video. Find out how you can get involved in this struggle. The bottom right, the black and white QR code, scan that one and become a monthly sponsor to Burkina Books. This is the work of the All African People's Revolutionary Party in the Sahel region, in Africa, in Burkina Faso, in Niger, and hopefully one day soon in Mali as well, where we are on the ground. And what we're doing is we're asking you to become a monthly sponsor. That means you decide what you can pay every month, but you do it every month, even if it's $10 a month, US dollars. And the purpose of that is so that our organizers there can get the French translated revolutionary literature from people like Walter Rodney and Sekou Touré and Kwame Nkrumah and Malcolm X and Marcus Garvey and Assata Shakur and Carlotta Lukumi and all of these wonderful strugglers for liberation. Those books are not easy to find in Africa. And that's why we're doing the work to bring them there, and not just to bring them there, but to have them so that our organizers that we recruit can read them and get political education to engage the African Revolution. So help us with that work. And then My book at the top right, the QR code is next to it. A guide for organizing defense against white supremacist, patriarchal, and fascist violence. A guide for organizing defense against white supremacist, patriarchal, and fascist violence. Someone, somewhere, bought like 30 books in one day a few weeks ago. And I want to thank you, whoever you are, appreciate you. That's someone who's doing what we're asking, and we appreciate that. And what we're asking is that if you don't have the book, buy it. It's only $8 US. You can scan the QR code and get it. It's $5 US if you want the digital version. And then also it's a great organizing book. And with that, you can if you have it, then get your people to order it. Have book clubs, get the bookstore in your neighborhood. They can order them for $8, sell them for $10 or $12 and make a healthy profit. It's a good book. And your library, call them and ask them to order it. Bookstores and libraries, please call them and ask them. They'll take you 3 minutes out of your day to do that. But it's really helpful, especially since 100% of the proceeds received from book sales, every single penny goes towards the anti-fascist work that we do here, the self-defense classes and everything that we do, all of the security work that we do, all the traveling that we do to do trainings around how to help communities keep themselves safe from fascism. So help us out, you all. We appreciate you. Have a good rest of your day. Remember, make Juneteenth ours, a struggle for liberation. Forward ever. Enjoy the rest of your day.